Newsfirst. News with Faraz Shaukat.
And a splendid morning to you. This is Newsline. We're live as always from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And as we come to the end of the week, we've got a huge, big event happening. In so far as the SLPP are concerned, their policy document will be out today. To talk about that, perhaps, and a little bit more about the campaign itself, we've got the Member of Parliament from the Kegol district for the SLPP, Mr. Tariq Balasuri. Very good morning to you, Mr. Balasuri.
Good morning for us.
And it's today, is it, the manifesto?
Yes, at 9 o'clock at Nilum Mawat.
Right.
Nilum Pokuna.
Nilum Pokuna. Nilum Mawat is the office of somebody else, isn't it?
It's
right. Now then, what can the public expect?
Well, we are very excited about the release of the manifesto because the manifesto is very futuristic in that it will talk a lot about the education, it will talk a lot about the national security, it will talk a lot about the stimulating the economy. So I think it will be. I don't want to steal the thunder or give any information pertaining to the manifesto.
But a slight bit of a leak.
It pretty much includes most of the material which he has gone on stage and spoken of,
right.
Such as education, such as national security. So it's a manifesto looking at the future, and I think people will be, and also stimulating the economy in the short run. And I think it'll be far-reaching manifesto which most Sri Lankans will find will be pleased with.
It's futuristic, but is it achievable?
Of course, I think nothing is unachievable. If you have the right leadership, if you have the right vision, and if you have the strength to put that vision into practice, I think
Is it financially achievable?
Yes, of course, financially it's achievable. We have done our numbers, but more than that, I think what Sri Lanka has been lacking is the lack of leadership, lack of belief that that we can achieve things. I remember way back in 1996 when Arjuna won the World Cup for Sri Lanka, we had a mentality of failure. I think I credit Arjuna to changing that mentality. So similarly, when the war started, Cyril Ranatunga was the first general not the first general, but rather in 1983 he was the army commander, and he came on media and said that we cannot win this war, and that mindset was.
Did he do that? I didn't know that.
He said that, and then the mindset for so many for so long was that this war cannot be won. And I remember when Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa came as the Secretary to the Ministry of Defence, and prior to that, the army didn't have a very, let's say, a respectable reputation, because there were many cases which were reported of army deserters joining in the underworld. And
so, are you crediting Mr. Rajapaksa with having changed all that?
I am crediting Mr. Rajapaksa with being a part of the team which transformed the
part of the team.
Yes,
because he was only an official in admin.
Yeah,
but we had commanders, and when it comes to other issues like like the allegations being made, Mr. Rajapaksa's defense is that he was the defense secretary.
I think the particular question which the journalist raised was, you were the army, you were the commander of the army, which he said he wasn't the commander of the army. Yes, he addressed that the question in a very specific manner. I don't know why it's been misinterpreted, but it's not only the army which was transformed. It was also the Navy and the Air Force and the Civil Defence Forces. The Civil Defence.
You're crediting him with being part of the team, team change, if you like.
Yes, pertaining to the army.
Yeah.
But it's just not only the army, you know. I'm referring to pertaining to the forces, but it's not only the forces. But then later he takes up the post of secretary to the the Ministry of Urban Development, and then again he's able to do the same thing. He not only develops the city. I think, you know, a lot of people can just develop a city, but it's very difficult to transform that society. But what we saw for us was that, you know, Colombo being clean and the people taking more responsibility. They didn't even, you know, bother. Let's say if we eat a toffee, they didn't put the wrap on the on the ground because they wanted to keep it clean.
Was that pride or fear?
I mean, you know, you can interpret it in any way, but a Sri Lankan who goes to Singapore adheres by those laws, and then the same Sri Lankan who comes back to Sri Lanka then eats a toffee and then puts the wrap, or rather litters the road.
It out the window or
litters, yeah. So then you know, when the Sri Lankans, when they talk about, you know, Singapore or Malaysia, then, you know, they don't ask pride or fear. You know, they adhere to the law.
Let's move on from toffee wrappers being chucked out on the floor in a very detrimental and bad way. Send us your questions on 0772 300 305 by SMS only, please. And we are in conversation with Tarak Abali Surya, Member of Parliament from the Kegol district. Now then, so what you're saying is that candidate Rajapaksa has a plan. It's going to be unveiled today.
Yeah.
Can I ask, are you able to give us one little point out of that?
Well, he's looking at education for all.
Education for all. Now that sounds a jolly good thing. Do the tabs feature anywhere there?
No, I think that's a Yahapalana policy.
Okay. What sort of budget have you all allocated to spending on
I wouldn't know the specifics of because it's not a budget; it's a manifesto.
Yes.
So in the manifesto, you don't
get so specific.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
But and you're confident. You've seen this document, have you?
We have discussed specific parts of it, not the entire document at the moment.
Right.
Let's say now I was in the Energy Committee. There was different committees,
right? And
then we came out with certain proposals as to how best we move forward.
Yeah.
Now, for example, if you look at, you know, the present government, for the last 4 years, they didn't add any power to the national grid. But you know that as a result of that, there's going to be an imminent power crisis, let's say within the next two or 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we address this sort of problem? So you need to have mid-term or long-term thinking. And then my the MPs, my colleagues, they were in different other committees, and then
so you all have you've taken the wind out of my question, which was going to be, in the preparation of the manifesto, has there been consultation of the members of Parliament?
Yes. Not only there's been consultation with the members of Parliament. The manifesto was initially, I would say it's based on Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa started the Viatmaga, which mainly involved intellectuals and as well as I think far back as 2 years, they started coming up with consistent policies which and developing a national framework which the country should follow. So the points were discussed with the members of Parliament, and adjustments were made where it had to be, and thus the end result being the manifesto.
What amongst the questions already received is this one here. Declaration of assets.
Yes.
Will candidate Rajapaksa be making it publicly available?
I don't know. Will Sajid Premadasa be making it publicly available?
Why? What has that got to do with candidate Rajapaksa? Shouldn't he act in his own interest? And because he it's not a joint candidacy, Rajapaksa and Premadasa.
No, it's not a joint candidate.
I mean, why this? Because this, what will happen is, from your answer, is that, and we've had this in the CRPAL in the government,
Yeah.
whenever we as journalists, raise questions,
Yeah.
immediately they say, oh, well, the others did it. So what? That isn't the standard. Mr. Premadasa giving it or not giving it shouldn't be the standard.
No.
The standard should be transparency. And if you want to be transparent and you've got nothing to hide,
Yeah.
why not declare it?
Yeah, but from an interest of fairness, one candidate should not be asked for a higher level of.
No, we're not. I mean, if we had somebody else here from the opposite, from any of the other 33 odd camps, we'd ask the same question.
Yeah, but as journalists also, I mean, don't you think Mr. Premadasa has not worked a day in his life? His father has not worked a day.
Yes, but now you see, you're deflecting the answer. The question is, will candidate Rajapaksa be declaring making his asset declaration public?
I haven't discussed with that because at the moment I haven't discussed the matter with Mr. Rajapaksa at the moment because there's no need to do that legally. So I don't know.
So this is all going to be only legal. So this will be a fine joke then, because there are so many things. If you're talking about change, taking control, and changing the way things are being done, then you can't be looking at some standards and say when it suits you say, oh, well, legally we don't have to do that.
No,
well, legally, then in that case, legally the 19th Amendment's fine.
So who decides that?
The people ought to be able to decide.
Yeah. So has there been a request from the people saying that Mr. Rajapaksa needs to publicly declare his assets?
I'd like to invite you to examine my telephone. For the messages I get from the public.
Yeah.
Everyone, whether it is Premadasa, Rajapaksa, Senanayake, Dissanayake and the others, it's the same thing. They want transparency, and that's the whole problem. In the 25th, in the previous government, in the term of President Rajapaksa, Mahinda Rajapaksa, this was the whole problem. Every time the international community asked a question on governance and so on, Mr. Rajapaksa's stock answer was, well, I have a mandate. Yeah, right. How did you get the mandate? Nobody's asking about that. Nobody's even being told about it. So there's no point. Why don't you all want to follow and be transparent in the full sense of the word?
I don't think...
Why should...
No, you're not letting me explain.
Go on.
So, because this is politics, and then, it's not fair to ask one candidate something. Let me finish before you interrupt. Okay, let's say... Don't you think you should raise that question from Mr. Premadasa, who has not worked a day in his life and whose father has not worked a day in his life, and he says now he doesn't want...
All right, so does this mean...
He doesn't want a salary. You're not questioning that, but you're questioning about Gotabaya Rajapaksa. Okay, he has at least worked in his life. So, that seems like a very fair question to find out. How did Mr. Premadasa make all this money? Where he doesn't want even his salary, and he's going to give his salary to the salary to the government to solve all these the problems.
Right. So it looks like when the fact that you're relying on an answer by looking at the other candidate, are you worried about Sajid Premadasa's input into the political field?
Of course not. I think on 17th morning you will see the results.
I think. I need to say this. I believe, as a journalist, I believe, and not only as a journalist, but as a citizen of democracy, I believe that anyone coming into public life should be able to declare and make public their asset declaration, because it is absolutely critical. If you want to say, I am absolutely clean, I've only got the interests of democracy and the people at heart, you shouldn't be this is what I believe. But, you know, maybe you believe otherwise. That's fine, you know.
No,
honestly.
I believe that too, and that's why I declared my assets and I publicized it. But there are different MPs, for example, who have given reasonable.
But you've declared yours publicly.
Let me finish. Reasonable reasons as to why they have not publicized it. So I wouldn't say that just because they haven't publicized it, that they are rogues or thieves. Thieves. I do agree with you.
Here's a great suggestion from a viewer. Why is candidate Rajapaksa ducking a debate with his main contender?
Ducking the debate on what?
I believe that this is, they want, some people are asking that the two main contenders come for a debate with each other.
Well, for one thing, you know, the manifestos needs to be released. Has the UMP manifesto been released?
So your answer is that you're waiting for the manifesto?
Well, first of all, when you need to debate on something, you know, you need to know what the other person's policies are. You know, you can't debate on whether, you know, I'm going to come home.
But both sides, all sides will know what the people's...
But you need to release the manifesto first.
All right, so what you're saying is the answer will be given after the release of both manifestos and on
No,
all the others.
no. I'm not saying that. You know, I tweeted on this also because debates are, you know, fairly complicated issues. You know, you need to agree on a format of how the questions will be asked.
Is it really so complicated?
It is.
The people's the cost of living is going up. The growth is only around 1.3%. And so on. So there are some real issues that you can talk about. The dollar was 130, the dollar is 180 plus
but
now.
you need to know what you need to know your opponents, you know, the policies.
So that's what I'm saying. So what you're saying is
policies.
You'll be better informed to make a decision on a public debate between the two main contenders after the documents release.
Yes. But that alone, let's say for example, Sri Lanka has not had a history of debates between presidents or presidential candidates rather. And I think, you know, if you introduce such system into such a debate, I think that will be advantageous to the people. But at the midst of an election campaign, usually when a candidate asks for a debate, it's a candidate who's lagging behind. So, you know, then politically also for the candidate who's leading, it's not in his interest to go for a debate. But before that, we need to agree on a format and how a debate should be done. And
so that's the answer.
And before that, you know, the election manifestos has to be released.
Right. Okay. Now, I want to say this to you. You say that I'm not fair, but I
didn't say you're not fair.
People, you say that why aren't you asking Premadasa? Look, I'm telling you, and I'm saying this on air, as a network, we are not anti-anyone. We are not anti-Gota, to be very specific. And the proof is, if you get a stopwatch and you look at the coverage, it is entirely we allocate the same time. There are rules on the very fact that you're here today is because we do that. We have one from another side, one from this side, and we're trying to give out a picture to the people as to how each candidate, each side is trying to win the vote, the hearts, the minds of the people in the greater interest of the country. That's all.
Yeah. I think, you know, if you ask the general public, I'm not talking about, you know, the MTV or this the network, but there's a general perception that two private organizations are for the GR campaign and one private organization is for the Sajid campaign. It's just a general perception. I mean, and also the time allocations of, let's say, 50-50 doesn't just generally mean that it's also a fair time allocation. I'm not going to get into this.
But I assure you, if you do come and examine our records, and I welcome you to do that, because otherwise we won't have just your complaint. We have somebody called the Elections Commissioner. He's pretty hot on this kind of thing. You know, the letters come in.
But also,
if we do.
Also, I am also of the opinion that, you know, the let's say the TV stations, radio stations, or whatever, they are entirely can take a stand. Usually in England, the newspapers they endorse one candidate or the other. So that's
Only
fair.
some.
Yeah.
Mr. Murdoch, in the past,
Yeah.
has used some of his publications to openly say, well, we're going to support Labour or Conservative or whatever.
Mr. Murdoch has used, let's say one publication to support one candidate and the other
Well,
candidate.
yes, but
that's entirely okay.
But there's no compulsion on a media organization taking any stance. And in Sri Lanka, talking about Sri Lanka, we do have the elections commissioner, who I'm telling you, he's not easy.
I know him.
He will phone up and say, Now the thing is this. I really wanted to know, instead of getting bogged down in these things, I really wanted to know what the candidate Rajapaksa camp is going to, how are you going to address the challenges being faced? And the challenges are, one challenge is the people's concern about the uncomfortably high cost of living, the growth of the economy. How are we going to, what is the proposal from your camp to address those issues?
Well, first of all, we need to stimulate the economy. You can remember during the last 4 years, although this government speaks of fiscal consolidation, the taxes were raised by 100%. The earnings for the government, which stood at 2014 at over 1,000 billion, increased to over 2,000 billion. So the rate of taxes is strangling the people. Sajid Premadasa too also has come out and said the same thing. So I think you need to give a temporary relief to the people so that their income will increase. And then also we need to stimulate the economy but we are constrained in this matter to a certain degree, because let's say our borrowings during the Mahinda Rajapaksa the period from 2004 to 2014, it increased by about 5,000 billion, from 2,200 billion to about 7,400 billion. But subsequently, during the last 4 years, our borrowings increased from 7,400 billion to over 14,000 billion, which and also the rate of increase, the rates which we had to pay, increased from an average of about 4% to about 5.8%. So you're talking about paying two extra percentages, and then also due to the depreciation in 2018 alone, the cost of depreciation was about 800 billion. So I think we need to look at fiscal consolidation by not increasing the taxes, but rather by widening the tax network. At the moment, I think only about 30% of the people which rightfully should be paying taxes pay taxes. So I think we need to increase that. So then thereby there won't be a downward spiral on the government income. And I think as far as the infrastructure is concerned, we need to continue with whatever the infrastructure, especially with the road network, which has already been planned, and we need to look at infrastructure development in other areas, especially in technology areas, such as how do we bring in fast internet, such as 5G or some kind of technological solutions. And of course, the biggest investment, as Mr. Gotabaya Rajapaksa has said, will go to education. So I think that's how we hope to stimulate the economy.
Thank you for all the questions, and I'll just take this one here. I'm sorry I can't take them all. It's so many. It must be because it's Mr. Tariq Balasuri who's doing absolutely marvelous well on these programs. It says here that when all other channels are one-sided, it may be that the Sirasa channels, well, it's not only Sirasa, we've got all those other channels, it may look biased. And this person is pointing out that in 2015, when even the state channels were one-sided, in the end, it was the people who decided. And we all know what that result was. So thank you for your questions. I see. And there's something else here. We want to congratulate your guest for declaring his assets. So you can see the impact this thing is making.
Yeah.
You know, you've already done that. Now here we go. The Rajapaksa's administration in the past, and Mr. Gotabaya was part of that, have spent money on lots of infrastructure development projects and so on. Is the camp worried that now that in this last 4.5 years more money has been borrowed, that it's getting perilously close to a point where Sri Lanka really can't be borrowing any more money without taking care of the income? You need to... Are you all worried about that?
Yeah, of course we are worried. I don't think it's only the Rajapaksa camp which is worried. I think the whole of Sri Lanka should be worried about the state of the economy. But how do you come out of that? You can only come out of that, either through more fiscal consolidation, which is, increasing the taxes, which people can't afford to do, or you can, stimulate income. You can reduce taxes, hope that more investments will come in, bring in more investments, and then you can stimulate the income. So then the government will be able to make more money, although the rate of taxes will be lower.
Why is candidate Rajapaksa, this is a question from the public, one, thank you, why is candidate Rajapaksa having his brother by his side? It goes on, but that's the essence.
Yeah, what's wrong with having him by his side? Because, from day one we have said that, if Gotabaya Rajapaksa becomes president, Mahinda Rajapaksa will be the prime minister. I think I think, during this political process, it's... we are not hiding the fact that Mr. Rajapaksa is more of a technocrat. And so through this political process, somebody with experience should also guide him. Mr. Rajapaksa never said that he's a know-it-all. He never said he's not a one-man show.
Okay. So he's openly said that because the former president will be his prime minister,
yeah,
and he's been transparent about that,
yeah,
it makes sense for him to have the brother.
And also, I think one of the key reasons for the failure of the Yahapalana government was that the prime minister and the president couldn't work together. So in that context, I think it's essential that you have prime minister and a president who can work together. And Sajith Premadasa has not come out and said who his prime minister. Well, they say that Ranil Wickremesinghe will be the prime minister. So I don't know how well that marriage will work out. I think certainly the two brothers will be able to have better understanding than Sajith Premadasa and Ranil Wickremesinghe working together.
I must read this message out,
yeah,
because it's absolutely spot on. This guy, I presume you mean our guest, I like him, but unfortunately he's on the wrong side. How do you respond to that? The public, the members of the public say, he likes you, he likes what you've done your asset declarations, and he obviously likes the way you speak. So he says, I like you, but he's on the wrong side. What do you say to somebody like that?
Why the wrong side? Because SLPP is a party which is more center of the left and which is more nationalistic. I don't think being nationalistic or being center of the left makes me on the wrong side. I think it's even not, it's not about even left or right anymore. We really need to look at what works for this country. And I've been, in conversation with people from the JVP, conversation with people from the UMP. And, there are, smart people, there are clean people. And so I think, we need to come out with, some common policies. I don't really see that there'll be a huge difference in, let's say, the energy policy of the United UNP and, let's say, the SLPP. So if we can agree on the education policies, or let's say the JVP and let's say the UMP can, for example, agree on the education policies. So if we can agree on certain common policies, this country can be put right. But in order to do that, you need to have a leader, you need to have a visionary leader who believes he can do that. There's no point of, rhetoric saying that, I'm going to come to your houses in the night and see whether you're happy. Or there's no point of, rhetoric saying that, I'll be more humble than, the dirt which you trample upon. And we have seen on videos that, that's not the case to be. That's not the case to be. So I think we have had enough rhetoric for the last 4.5 years. Now the time has come for a man of action and man of his word.
Is candidate Rajapaksa, yet another question, is candidate Rajapaksa concerned about the tax and legal implications of a person who has renounced their American citizenship? I'm talking about the Immigration Act Clause 225.
I don't know the Immigration Act Clause 245.
So in conversations in your planning process, has candidate Rajapaksa indicated any discomfort, or is he pretty confident that he can address these issues?
He has,
even though it is like a no escape clause.
Well, he has addressed the issues. People have taken him to courts, and the courts have given their verdicts on that. So I don't think it wouldn't matter, unless, of course, the UMP keeps using this as a strategy in order to deter the voters. I think such strategy was used in 1982 elections when Colin R. Silva said that. The appointment of Hector Kadua was null and void because Mrs. Bandaranayake presided over a Central Committee meeting, which Hector Kadua was appointed. And Colvin's argument was that Mrs. Bandaranayake had lost her civic rights at that juncture, so she had no role in appointing the candidate. So these are just made up stories by the opposition in order to deter the votes. But after 4.5 years of suffering, I and myself, heavily campaigning in Kego, I see that people won't change. I see that in Gotabaya Rajapaksa, people see hope, and I think what Mr. Sajid Premadasa is doing is he's just taking his father's slogans and bringing it forward. And this
just as much as the answer to that is just as much as Gotabaya Rajapaksa is relying on his brother's slogans.
Not
and his
necessarily. I mean,
presidency for the last 10 years.
Mahinda Rajapaksa, for example, was not so heavy on let's say technology, but Gotabaya Rajapaksa looks at especially the IT sector as one of the key growth areas, and we have a plan of increasing the export earnings from the IT sector from 1 billion to 3 billion within the 5 years period.
Tarak Balasuri, thank you very much for having been on Newsline. We appreciate your presence. And in conclusion, I'd like to say that I'd like to congratulate you actually on declaring your assets, making it public. That's the point here. Making it public.
So what we'll do is we'll encourage all candidates to
yes, I hope exactly. That's what I'm saying. That hopefully you will fire the conscience and fire it up with encouragement and get everybody else, all candidates, not only presidential, even in for the parliamentary and provincial and local elections too. And as far as the independence of the media is concerned, I can't comment on the other channels, but I can most certainly comment on this channel, and I can tell you that we have very strict rules, and there's somebody up there, probably with the little stopwatch, counting it out. And when it comes to our news, I can assure you that we give equal coverage down to the last second. I'm saying that with confidence because I know what happens out there on our third floor, which is where the news is done. Tariq Balasuri, thank you very much. It's been an absolute marvellous pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And that's the way it was on Newsline. Take care. Have a wonderful weekend ahead of you. And do tune in to News First, because in a few hours we'll bring you the details from the policy manifesto that candidate Gotabaya Rajapaksa will be putting out. And here we go. Take care, and again, have a great weekend. God bless.
News First, Newsline with Faraz